Good afternoon. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Monday, September 25th, 2023. It is 4:36 p.m. This session is set to go until 5 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110 for public virtual attendance. You may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. To my right is Vice Chair Ty Menser. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards. Also in the boardroom, we have Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell and Assistant County Manager Rob Gelder. And we will be discussing the policy for publicly available electric vehicle. And Rebecca Harvey, our Climate Mitigation Senior Program Manager, is here with us today, as well as Bruce from Central Services, or ER&R, and Jason Ash as well from Central Services. And so we will pass it on to Rebecca to take it on.
Yeah,
Yep,
I'm ready to go ahead, jump right in.
All right.
It's been a long day.
Good afternoon. It has been a long day. Last meeting of the day. Try to get through my presentation pretty quickly so we have time to discuss. So today's briefing follows up on the briefing that we had on March 15th, 2023 on electric vehicle infrastructure, and the board provided direction to move forward with drafting a county policy for publicly available EV charging stations. And this initiative continues to be a collaboration between myself, Climate Mitigation Senior Program Manager in the County Commissioner's Office with Central Services, and we have Bruce and Jason here as well. So let's see if I can advance.
Just roll it.
Oh, just. Oops. Okay, there it is. All right. So to refresh our collective memories, at the March 15th briefing, we discussed the market for electric vehicles and how it has been growing even faster than anticipated. We discussed how EVs are becoming more available and more affordable, even reaching price parity with mass market light duty gasoline-powered vehicles, and used EVs are also becoming more available, making this a more affordable option for many households. And we also looked at some cost information for the electricity costs, for the operations and maintenance costs of EV charging stations, and we have continuing information all the time about the grants available for installing the charging stations themselves. I'm not going to review the cost information, but I do have my notes from the last meeting if anyone has questions. And I repeated this slide from last time as well, just a brief review of the state and federal goals and policies encouraging EV adoption and supporting the growth of a charging network in the state and nationally. And the policy draft that you have also includes links to the many state rules and laws supporting the deployment of EV infrastructure in the state. And so this just underscores again how this transition is underway. It's happening. Goals are in place. The manufacturers are moving their platforms, and Thurston County has the opportunity to now be part of this transition to clean transportation. And it's so important to meeting our climate mitigation goals. So I will just go through the policy, the draft policy for discussion. I'll just jump right in. So the general policy statement that the staff has drafted is to support electric vehicle use and adoption and contribute to regional climate mitigation goals. Thurston County commits to providing publicly available EV charging stations. Level 2 charging is intended to be provided at no cost, and DC fast charging stations are intended to be fee-based. This policy provides guidance on ownership, funding, site identification, planning, and use of EV supply equipment on county property that is designated for use by members of the public. The policy also provides guidance on the development of a workplace charging program for Thurston County employees. The next section is funding and ownership, which is just, the whole policy is pretty high level guidance, which will be preceded will be followed by procedure development. So at a high level, some guidance on funding and ownership just states that the county may seek state, federal, and other funding opportunities for the procurement, installation, operations, and maintenance of the charging stations. That we may prioritize deployment opportunities that are funded by grants and or private investments, and determining ownership on a case-by-case basis. In some cases, we may the county may choose to own the stations themselves. In other cases, there may be opportunities for third-party ownership, so we're open to exploring those as well. And then the next section is site identification and planning. This addresses the criteria for selecting sites, potential partnerships for deploying chargers on non-county property, types and number of stations, which would also be decided on a case-by-case basis to fit the specific needs and use of each site, prioritizing sites that have the potential for shared use between the public and county fleet vehicles when that's determined feasible. And then finally and importantly, the county will monitor technological advancements in electric vehicles and charging infrastructure, and will periodically assess the viability and effectiveness of the charging stations that are installed or planned to be installed on county property. Okay, and then two more sections here. This one is very short and sweet, is just a couple of statements about charging station use, just that the publicly available EVSE will be clearly identified through signage and stall painting, and the county will require vehicles to be actively charging when parked in the stall, and will develop procedures to support this policy. And then finally, the development of a, I guess I would say the policy sets a framework for the potential future development of a workplace charging program if this is something that the county deems is needed and is feasible. So this is really, again, just high level, setting the framework in place so we can move forward if we have board direction to do so. And this just defines some preliminary steps that would be involved in setting up a workplace charging program for county employees. So that is it. So today, staff is requesting direction to bring this policy forward to a Board of County Commissioners meeting for approval. And then if approved, given a little preview of some of the next steps, which would be to develop procedures to implement the policy, conduct an electric vehicle infrastructure assessment of county properties so we can answer some of these starting questions. Where do they go? What use, where does it make sense to have public chargers? Where does it make sense to possibly add definitely add fleet chargers. That's another goal that ER&R has, and we will be moving forward with that, but in what cases does it make sense to share those, and answer all those questions going forward. And then, of course, continue to seek the grant funding and other private funding, and I have a couple grants on my desk to look at right now, because there are several of them. And I will stop there, and again, Bruce and Jason are here with me to answer any questions and hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. Have we coordinated with Lacey on what they're doing, so whatever we eventually do matches with what Lacey's doing? I say Lacey just because Lacey's the biggest town we got now.
Okay.
So
Great question. We have our partnership with the climate programs across all three of the cities in the north of the county.
Yeah, but have you really coordinated, and so you're all doing the same thing?
On this particular topic, we have not chosen it as a really focused initiative for regional coordination, but the staff team meets very regularly, and we can certainly have those conversations. And the executive committee meets quarterly, but has chosen different issues as the focal areas for this year.
I know I talked to somebody over at Lacey here a while back, and one of the problems they were having was strangers were plugging into the plug-ins by the city hall and then running off to one of the offices across the way. Now, I don't know if that was one of the I don't think it was a charge station, but they talked about charge stations having the ability to be charging, and then if it was to have a certain amount of time that they did not come after their car was charged, then they got additional charging on their card to make up for it, so that you didn't have deadbeats just pulling in and plugging in and going wherever and not coming back. Then the other thing, what about all the electric bikes that some of the bums are driving around? They seem to make it their mode of transportation. They're stealing some, we're getting a lot of that. Are you gonna plug them in at night, shut them off at night? How are we gonna keep track of that? So just a few issues of, who polices the plug-ins, okay, is that you're
Absolutely.
gonna have a deputy sheriff come around and they don't have the right sticker on their car, so they can't plug in.
Right.
I don't know, and then we've talked about funding in the past, and I was told that the government was gonna be giving out grants for this kind of thing, so is that in the works? Have we got grants? Are we ready to go? Bruce has got a bunch of plug-in things to go hook up that came free in the mail from Amazon or whatever.
Wasn't quite that good.
And then the last thing, I think I mentioned this before, maybe to Robin, and that was one fund cannot pay for another, or what
right.
about gifting of public
Gifting of
resources
public
to
funds.
the public, and is there an exemption for that?
There
If
is.
so, what? And,
So, and, yeah, go ahead.
I'll start with the last question
Okay.
first.
Yeah.
yeah,
A lot of good questions. Thank you, Commissioner. As far as the gifting of public funds, I would refer to RCW 4301.250. How did I say that? Which explicitly authorizes the purchase of power at state expense to recharge privately and publicly owned electric vehicles at state office locations.
at state
So
office
I would
locations.
propose, and we can have this discussion,
Did
that
you say at state office
at
locations?
state office locations.
And probably
And
county
so
offices.
most-
That
I mean,
RCW, yeah.
Local governments are following suit. It's a
Exactly.
model that local governments are following as well. When these are not just, in most cases, I did get your point about the people coming to the Lacey City Hall and going elsewhere, but the intent is certainly for members of the public who are using county facilities or doing business with the county. And that's exactly what the state is addressing in the statute. It's folks who are there at the offices doing business.
If we have a plug-in somewhere out here in our parking lot, so that EVs can pull up,
Mhm.
and somebody's gonna come in for, I don't know, 20 minutes, is there a benefit from those plug-ins versus the kind of the fast ones where you maybe put a credit card in or something?
Well,
I guess why don't
is
we
there-
have all fast charging
they're
credit card
much
funding?
more expensive, I think, is the quick and
Well, yeah, but the
simple
government's gonna pay
answer.
for it.
Wow.
Well,
We're
they will
looking
pay
grant
for it if you
money.
can demonstrate that the use
Have
case
you
is
identified money yet?
effective. Oh,
The
yes.
main thing that I've been
Mhm.
opposed to is using public money to
Mhm.
pay for fuel
Okay,
for everybody. I'm not against electric cars for the county and charging and all that kind of stuff. But I have my concerns about the other.
So at this time, just looping back to the gift of public funds, the state has passed the law that for the state, it is not considered a gift of public funds, and we're gonna follow suit. Because we always felt that there was a public benefit to allowing the charging at EV stations. So, and I think we heard Rebecca say that local government in general is.
So we have to pass an
gonna align
ordinance
with
that
Yeah, is there an ordinance that it's gonna take to do something like that?
I don't think we need an ordinance on
and what
that.
about
We're gonna
buying the
set this
equipment and putting it in?
policy.
Yeah.
For the equipment and the purchase, we have been working for some time on county fleet and putting in the facilities necessary to charge our own cars. But Rebecca has been working very diligently on finding grants. I believe we have the first one at the Ag
Ag
Park.
Park at Tenino.
Yep.
We have not heard about it yet, but they did just get back to me asking for a few more details and a very detailed
How about the
application.
fairgrounds? You get anything there?
That would absolutely be a candidate. And so right now we have 2 grants, state grants that have just opened up in the last couple weeks, and they're open through mid-November to December to install chargers. So we're gonna meet soon and
So
look at
have
those and
Robin's
identify the sites.
People, financial services or something,
Yep.
pay for
we're
them to
paying
put it in, they get the,
We're watching for
equipment.
the grant money, and when it comes, then.
but
yep,
in the
we would all
meantime, what happens?
coordinate.
My concern is using Thurston County taxpayer money and possibly not getting
So-
reimbursed.
Right now, the only thing that we're actively working on that is not going to be grant funded is county
Sure, our
charging
own
stations for county cars.
Yeah.
So for example, I get disoriented with the charging station that's going to go in for this building.
there's one out there.
There's gonna be
There,
one
yeah.
in Space One, that is for the county-owned electric vehicle that will live at this building. So it is for a county,
Is that a
vehicle.
quick charge, a slow charge?
It's
a level 2.
It's a what?
Level 2.
level two.
I guess
Level
I don't
2
know.
are
medium.
medium charge, yeah, they
Would
take
you be able to plug in
couple
and
hours.
charge yours?
No, well, no,
No,
cause it's for the
it's going
county.
to be for the
vehicle.
county
But in
vehicle.
theory, Level 2 is
Specifically
like,
for
you
the
know,
county
think of it as an
vehicle.
overnight charge.
Takes a while.
Level 1 takes like 3 days, level 2 is overnight.
Level 1
Right.
takes overnight. for
Eh,
me.
5 hours.
That's what I use.
It takes-
Level 2
55
can
hours
take
for
what,
level one.
3
Level
to
two
3 to
take-
5 hours, but,
It takes me 6 to 8.
okay, so.
I mean, we're gonna put in for grants even for those, right? But
And then a
we're gonna
fast
use
charge
county
zone.
money to
We
do
are
it
gonna,
initially.
for county vehicles, we have county money set aside specifically for that.
Out of public works,
Out
road
at,
department.
for
Not
the
general
first
fund.
stations at Public Works, it'll be Public Works Fund. For, this one, it is M&O, ER&R M&O, or Building Reserve, which is billed out. But for charges that are available to the public or employees, Rebecca is actively seeking grant funding, and we're not gonna build any until we have money in hand.
Good.
Questions?
Stop sharing the screen.
I guess going back to Commissioner Edwards' questions in regards to the time limit aspect of it, right? With the publicly facing one, is there like a 2-hour limit, for example, or is there a time limit where, you know, someone can connect to these chargers, or is it just, you know, first come, first serve, and I can be there for, 8 hours, or?
It's the
And-
policy that the.
And does the,
Right.
yeah, well, then the enforcement is the other. But is there, does that preclude us from grants if there is maybe a sign that says, 2-hour limit?
As long as we're open to the public, I don't know about limits, but we'd have to look at any individual grant that we apply for and are successfully getting. This is the policy that enables the county to go forward. We would have to write procedures, and that would address those types of questions.
Yeah, it is certainly standard practice to have some limit. If it's 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, that would be a procedural decision that we make.
Like on a washing machine, you turn it to 30 minutes or something, I don't know, so they can't be there all day.
You can, I believe, do that, you can do that with the smart chargers if, and many of the grants require the network chargers that have
So like,
software and you
for
can
the public
program
or
it to
whatever.
do something like that, yes.
They'd be able to plug in, turn their thing. But where parking is a premium, as it is here some days, how is that gonna work? And who's gonna, what, are you gonna put a spike on their tire, one of them little spike things that clamp on so they can't
So we
drive
haven't,
away without?
we haven't worked out the enforcement end of this yet. That's all like next steps.
I would just as soon Rebecca didn't have to do that if Lacey's already done it. Just,
Right.
I like to copy things if
Uh,
possible.
Absolutely. I love the idea
Or
of
or
meeting with.
Olympia, I don't know who's done it
the
yet, but
others
I
within the
happen to
city.
have talked to Lacey.
Tumwater has as well at their city hall recently, so absolutely. I
Yeah,
want to hear
let's-
those lessons
let's
learned
learn
and
something
not
from
make
the
this.
others.
And
any mistakes.
Commissioner, your question about the e-bikes, et cetera, this infrastructure would not support those because e-bikes are generally charged off of 110, just a regular house.
Oh, so these things are not
Plug it
like
in.
110 or something?
No.
They're 240.
Cause I envisioned some folks would pull up and run their microwave and do
Yeah.
everything.
Very
Pull up
different.
with their dryer.
Yeah, maybe
But
that.
the plug is.
Is it
different,
more like a 220 dryer or something? Is
Yeah.
that what it is? It is, okay, I don't know.
But not the adapter that actually would go into the car.
Well, you know, they have adapters that go on RV plug-ins that you can do something that would normally plug in here, but they plug it in. I don't know, I don't know.
Someone, there's always someone.
Somebody will
looking
want
for
to be
a
tricked, they'll want to trick it all the time.
Any additional questions, comments?
Sounds good, sounds like you got a plan, just not quite brought to fruition yet, huh?
Okay, so, but again, this is the policy that enables us to take the next step. And if you look at the policy, you'll see that throughout it says may install charging stations, may make them available to the public. So we'd like to bring this before you for approval and then we can take the next step.
Oh, do you think this is kind of finished, but don't we have to know some of those answers from the other jurisdictions and include
That's what we're talking to
them?
you about. Do you want answers to your questions before we put this on an agenda?
I would rather have answers to the questions so we don't ever get, well, I don't know how we do that, we'll figure that out. Those aren't good answers for the public to hear, for me. So that's where I'm at. I want the answers before we pass it.
Before we ask you
Yeah,
to
I don't
vote.
wanna be like Nancy Pelosi, we gotta pass this so we can see what's in it.
I just want to be, that
I
it
don't
does
wanna
say
go
that
there.
this is an informational session.
Right, we would bring you a packet, an AIS, we'd put in AIS for your decision.
So,
But we'll come back with the answers before we do that. Do you have a clear, you understand what the questions
What
are?
I took away was to learn from other cities, particularly.
Yeah, to make sure we
Lacey.
put something in place that works, so we don't have to run around looking for a deputy sheriff to go give somebody a parking ticket. Do
think-
we have an
yeah.
ordinance for, parking violations that could be when you're inappropriately parked in a EV? If we're really gonna make it work, you know, you gotta do it right.
Well,
It'll
I
be
think
handy.
that the state statutes that we covered in the policy address, parking and enforcement. I will look back at them because there's several of them, but I can specify out. I think what you're asking Commissioner mostly about is how do we enforce use of the chargers?
If we're gonna do it, let's be fair to all parties that are gonna be involved in it. I mean, so I got nothing against the whole thing, the concept of, I don't particularly care for them, but if they get them so I can drive to Spokane and back, I'll probably get one.
On one charge?
Well, in 10 minutes, if I can charge it in 10 minutes is okay.
You need enough time to take a break for
Well, I'll have
lunch
lunch,
or
okay.
something.
We'll go there and have lunch. But I do think we need to have those things figured out ahead of time, like enforcement. What are we gonna do if somebody continues to park like they were over at Lacey? That was a frustration they were talking about when I was asking about it. So how do they deal with it? I don't know. I never got back to them to find out. What about a timer thing? Do we have the ability to have a timer on there to turn it on so they can come in the building? Or they can go do whatever they're doing, and they know it's gonna go for a half hour or 20 minutes or whatever you determine.
What the software is capable of.
What would it take to make all that work? I don't know.
Would a memo of best practices on parking enforcement?
Oh, I
Serve
think
the
whatever we
purpose, do
put
you
in the
think?
policy ought to be the finished product about
Adding details to
what
the
are we gonna do?
policy? Because I was under the impression those details would go in the procedures.
Those types of things would have been in the procedure that we would,
Yeah, but they're not in here yet. what we're gonna do,
that's right.
that's
This is
all.
the policy. Creates a framework for going forward. And we would have put that type of thing, time limits, enforcement into the procedure that comes
Yeah, I
next,
mean,
but,
for me, it just isn't thought out enough yet,
all right.
that's all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so Rebecca will follow up with some of those answers. Okay.
And would we do something like, for now, you know, we're gonna do it here for the county fleet. But like if we're gonna do it for employees, would we have stuff up at the courthouse that people could show up and plug, I guess that takes a different setup or something, the charge for that, right? Or even over at our parking lot, across the street over here?
Well, this
What's
is,
the
this
long
is
range plan to
leased
get something going?
space. So having chargers in the parking lot for this building or across the street, it's a little different than on our own property. So
This
we're
isn't our own
gonna,
property either, it's a leased property
that's
across the
exactly what I'm
street.
saying.
and This is
It's-
leased property here.
This is
so
leased. So it's not likely we're gonna start with this building.
Maybe up at the
We're
courthouse
gonna,
or something.
probably the courthouse or out at Tilly or,
Yeah,
yep, where we're the owners and can have a little more control. Or we're also looking at parks, at the, yep,
or like
Parks
at the
and Trails.
county parks or something. yeah.
where people could park, go.
Would we be putting
recreate.
in level threes? What are the ones that, what's the one that you put your credit card in?
Fast charges, level
The
3.
level 3.
So that'd be level three, so you have 1, 2, and 3?
Starters.
I don't know, sounds,
The expensive.
The grants do
Sounds like
support
you're
level
headed
3
there.
too, but you have to prove that it's a good spot for the level 3. If it's near the freeway or a heavy, a long something that
Access.
supports long
Yeah.
distance travel. That's what
It's
we've
an-
asked for at
I-
the Tenino
I've actually watched some, little segments on different, where they tried to go somewhere, well, wasn't enough chargers, you know. But I know like down on 93rd, Tesla's got a bunch of chargers there at that
Mhm.
one gas station.
Mhm.
And I see them like different, like Safeway, and different ones. So I think
Walmart.
capitalism is gonna work on this because it's kinda like the $5 chicken at Costco. You know, they're probably not making anything on it, but it gets you in the door. So,
It raises awareness.
Yes, it
too,
does.
And
Yeah.
that's the overall goal is to promote,
Single time.
to move towards move the transition along to meet the goals that we've set and promote.
The one I go
adoption.
to in Lacey is right next door to Crumble Cookie, so I'm.
That's dangerous.
is it the
Okay.
plug-in kind with the charger, the credit card, and
Mhm.
that kind of thing?
Yep.
I see them at quite a few of the
Right.
stores now.
Okay,
We got a little more
Yeah.
work to do.
it is 5:04. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.